Hello, this is the role-playing guy, and today we're going to have a history and look at the Final Fantasy series. There'll be every single Final Fantasy from 1 to... well, I'll try and do 14, and I'll be reviewing as well as giving the history behind each and every one, because I think Final Fantasy is such a series that it deserves that. So this is Geezer, and this is Let's Watch the History and Review Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 1 was a role-playing game, first developed and published in Japan by a company called Square in 1987, and was created predominantly by Hironobu Sakaguchi. It was the first game in the Final Fantasy series. It was originally released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, the reason for the name Final Fantasy was the company Square had gone through a hard time, and they were, well, they released games and they weren't really selling well. The only one I can think of, I think, was Rad Racer. But apart from that, they weren't really popular, and it was called the Final Fantasy because it was their final fantasy. It was the last chance for them. And well, it's kind of ironic now that we've got 14 more. But anyway, basically the plot of the game is you're 4 young youths named the Light Warriors, who each carry one of the four worlds' elemental orbs, which has been darkened by the 4 elemental feed. Together they have to quest to defeat these evil forces and restore the light to the orbs and save the world. Now, when it was first released, the game received generally positive reviews and was regarded as one of the most influential and successful role-playing games on the NES, and playing a major role in popularising the genre. Now, one of the biggest new features of these new games was the fact that you could actually, it was like a sideways view, and it had perfect, music developed by Nobuo Uematsu for each area, so it felt individual and unique. Also, the fact that there was animations for the spells and the weapons was very unique at the time, and it was praised for its focus on the game's graphics. But however, there was criticism targeted at the time spent wandering in search of random battles to raise a player's experience levels. All versions of Final Fantasy have sold a combined total of 2 million copies worldwide, and this was found in 2003. Now, first of all, Final Fantasy has 4 basic game modes: an overworld map, town and dungeon maps, a battle screen, and a menu screen. The overworld map was a scaled-down version of the game's fictional world, which the player uses to direct the characters to various locations. The primary means of travel across the world was by foot, but however, the party did receive a canoe, a ship, and eventually an airship, which is now one of the staples of the Final Fantasy series. With the exception of some battles in preset locations or with bosses, enemies are randomly encountered on field maps or on the overworld map when travelling by foot, canoe or ship, and must be either fought or fled. The player begins the game by choosing 4 characters to form a party, which lasts for the duration of the game. Now, the 4 characters you choose, you have 6 character classes to choose from. You have the warrior, the monk, the black mage, the white mage, the thief, and the red mage. Now, in the original version, there was an intelligence bug, which meant that, well, a red mage could use spells just as effectively as the black or white mage, therefore meaning that it could be a powerful attacker and very, 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 very good at using spells. However, it couldn't use every single spell on the game. Now, the game's plot develops as the player progresses through the towns and dungeons. Some towns have citizens that offer helpful information, while others own shops that sell items or equipment. Dungeons appear in the game include caves, forests, swamps, underwater caverns and buildings. Dungeons often contained treasure chests and contained rare items that weren't available in most stores. Now, the game's menu screen allowed the player to keep track of their experience points and levels, and to choose which equipment their characters would wield at that time, and use items and magic. A character's most basic attribute was their level, which could range from 1 to 50, and is determined by the character's amount of experience. Gaining a level increased the character's attributes, such as their maximum hit points, and among other things like the strength, will, and wisdom, and things like that. When a character's HP reached 0, it was basically game over, and characters gained their experience points by winning battles. Now, combat in Final Fantasy was menu-based. The player selects an action from a list of options such as fight, magic, and items. Battles are turn-based and continue until either side flees or is defeated. If the party wins, each character gains experience, and the party as a whole also receive gold. If fleed, they are returned to the map screen, and if every character in the party dies, the game is over. Final Fantasy was the first game to show the player's characters on the right side of the screen and the enemies on the left, as opposed to the stereotypical first-person view. Magic was a common ability in the game, and several character classes were able to use it. Spells were divided into two groups: white, which is defensive and healing, and black, which is debilitating and destructive. Magic can be bought from white and black magic shops and are assigned to characters whose occupation allows them to use it. Spells are classified by a level between 1 and 8, with 4 white and 4 black spells per level. Each character could only learn 3 spells per level. White and black mages can potentially learn any of their respective spells, while red mages, the ninja and the knight, could not use most high-level magic. Now the plot is Final Fantasy basically takes place in a fantasy world with 3 large continents. The elemental powers on this world are determined by the state of 4 orbs or crystals in newer versions, each governing one of the 4 classic elements: earth, fire, water and wind. The world of Final Fantasy was inhabited by numerous races, including humans, dwarves, elves, mermaids, dragons and robots. Each non-human race had 1 town in the game, although individuals are sometimes found in human towns or other areas as well. Now, 400 years prior to the start of the game, the Lefinish people, who used the power of wind to craft airships and a giant spaceship, watched their country decline as the wind orb went dark. 200 years later, a violent storm sank a massive shrine that served as the centre of an ocean-based civilization, and the water crystal was also turned into darkness. The earth and fire orb followed, and the earth was plagued with raging wildfire and decaying earth, devastating the agricultural town of Melmond, as the plains and vegetation were obviously decaying. Sometimes later, the great sage Lucan tells a prophecy that the 4 light warriors will come to save them in the time of darkness. Now the game begins with the appearance of the 4 youthful light warriors, who are unequipped when you first find them, and the game basically starts outside of the first time Cornelia, I can't remember what it is. Now basically, initially the light warriors have access to the Kingdom of Cornelia and the ruined Temple of Fiends. Now the first quest, you need to prove that you are the light warriors, and you go and see the King of Cornelia, and he asks you to go and rescue your daughter Sarah, who has been taken away by the evil knight Garland, who once was good. Now after the warriors rescue Prince Sarah from the evil knight Garland, the King of Cornelia builds a bridge that enables the light warriors passage, and also Sarah gives the light warriors a loot which is used for later in the game. This bridge enables the light warriors to pass through the town of Pravoka. The light warriors liberate the town from Bick and his band of pirates and acquire the pirate ship for their own use. The warriors then embarked on a chain of delivery quests on the shore of the Aldi Sea. First they retrieved the stolen crown from the marsh cave for a king in a ruined castle, who actually turned out to be the dark elf Astos, who had caused the elvinish princess to sleep. Defeating him gains them the crystal, which they return to the witch Matoya, who had lost her eye and had requested her crystal eye back in exchange for a herb. Now, in the original NES version, this crystal was actually the only crystal mentioned in the game. Anyway, Matoya exchanges the eye for a herb, which is needed to awake the Elf Prince, who has been cursed by Astos. The Elf Prince gave the warriors a key capable of unlocking any door. The key unlocks a storage room in Cornelia which holds TNT, and also many other places in the game where you can get valuable items such as, well, swords and gold. Nerik, one of the dwarves in the cave, destroys a small hole using the TNT, connecting the Aldi Sea to the outside world. After visiting the near ruined town of Melmond, the Light Warriors go to the Earth Cave and defeat a vampire, which makes them obtain the Star Ruby, which gives them passage to Sage Sarda's cave. With the Sarda's rod received from Sage Sarda, the warriors venture deeper into the Earth Cave and destroy the Earth Fiend Lich. The Light Warriors then obtain a canoe and enter Gurgle Volcano and defeat the Fire Fiend Carrie. The floater from the nearby ice cave allows them to raise an airship to reach the northern continents. After they prove their courage by retrieving the rat's tail from the Castle of Ordeal, the King of the Dragons, Bahamut, promotes each Light Warrior. Basically, the warrior became the knight, the thief became the ninja, the black mage became the black wizard, white mage white wizard, red mage red wizard, and the monk became the master. Using an air-producing fairy artifact, which was known as Oxale, the warriors defeated the water fiend Kraken in the sunken shrine. They also recover a slab which allows a linguist named Dr. to teach the Lefinish language. The warriors then travel to the Lefinish town, and the Lefinish give the Light Warriors access to the floating castle that the final Fiend, Tiamat the Wind Fiend, has taken over. With the 4 Fiends defeated and the orbs restored, a portal to 2,000 years in the past opens in the Temple of Fiends. There the warriors discover that the 4 Fiends sent Garland, now the Archdemon Chaos, back in time, and he sent the Fiends to the future to do so, creating a time loop by which he could live forever. The Light Warriors therefore defeated Chaos, thus ending the paradox and returning home. By ending the paradox, however, the Light Warriors had changed the future to one where the heroic deeds from the past were unknown outside of legend. Now, for the time, this was a revolutionary plot, and it was actually very acclaimed. It was very well translated in the American version, and apart from that, it got very good praise. Now, nowadays, this is more seen as a cliche plot, but because it was one of the first cliches, I think it was allowed. Now, the development of the game. Final Fantasy was developed during Square's brush with bankruptcy in 1987, and in this display of gallows humour, director Hironobu Sakaguchi declared that his final game would be a fantasy role-playing game, hence the title. When Sakaguchi was asked what type of game he wanted to make, he replied, "I don't think I have what it takes to make a good action game, however, I'm very good at telling a story." Sakaguchi's concept was a game with a large world map to explore and an engaging story. Sakaguchi took an in-development ROM of the game to Japanese magazine Family Computer, but it refused to review it. Video game magazine Famitsu, however, gave the game extensive coverage. The development team was composed of 7 people, while the other team at Square had about 20. Sakaguchi stated that if the game did not sell, he would quit making video games and return to college to make up a year. Only 200,000 copies were to be shipped, but Sakaguchi pleaded with the company to make 400,000 to help spawn a sequel, and the company agreed. The game's title and logo were designed by Yoshitaka Amano, and the scenario was written by a freelance writer at the time, Kenji Terada. Iranian-American freelance programmer Nasi Gevali, who was living in Japan at the time, worked as a programmer for most of the game. Among the other developers were Hiramoto Tanaka, Koichi Ishii, and Kazuko Shibuya. I'm sorry for butchering those pronunciations. Following the successful North American localization of Dragon Quest, Nintendo of America translated Final Fantasy into English and published it in North America in at the start of the 1990s. The North American version of Final Fantasy was well met with modest success, partly due to Nintendo's then aggressive marketing techniques. However, no version of the game was marketed in the PAL region until Final Fantasy Origins in 2003. Music for Final Fantasy was composed by Nobuo Uematsu and was his 16th video game music composition. The soundtrack album was released together with the score of Final Fantasy II in 1989. Some of the game tracks became mainstays to the Final Fantasy series. The prelude, which was written in 10 minutes, the arpeggio played on the title screen, the opening theme, which is played when the party crosses the bridge early in the game, and later referred to as the Final Fantasy theme, and the victory fanfare, which is played after every victorious battle and has been in almost every Final Fantasy since. The opening motif of the battle theme has also been reused a number of times in the series. Versions and re-releases. Final Fantasy has been remade several different times for different platforms and has frequently been packaged with number 2 in various collections. While all these remakes retain the same basic story and battle elements, various tweaks have been made in different areas, including graphics, sound, and specific game elements. The game was first re-released for the MSX2 system and was published by Microcabin in Japan in June 1989. It had access to almost 3 times as much storage space as the Famicom version, but suffered from problems not present in Nintendo's cartridge media, including noticeable loading times. There were also minor graphical upgrades, improved music tracks and sound effects. In 1994, Final Fantasy 1 and 2, a compilation of Final Fantasy 1 and 2, was launched for the Famicom. This version was only released in Japan and had very few graphical updates. The WonderSwan Color remake was released in Japan on December 9, 2000, and featured many graphical changes. The 8-bit graphics of the original Famicom game were updated, battle scenes were incorporated full background images, and character and enemy sprites were redrawn to look more like the ones from the Super Famicom Final Fantasy games. In Japan, Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy II were re-released both separately and as a combined game for the PlayStation. The collection was released in Japan in 2002 as Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Premium Package, and in PAL and North America in 2003 as Final Fantasy Origins. This version was similar to the WonderSwan Color remake and featured several changes such as more detailed graphics, a remixed soundtrack, added full-motion video sequences, and art galleries of Yoshitaka Amano's illustrations.